Welcome to the, September 16th, 2020 meeting of the Providence Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. Going to start with roll call. There's only 3 of us here, so I will say Jeff Nickerson, Chair.
Ed Rath, Vice Chair.
Daniel Moreno DeLuca, you present?
Yes.
Just trying to see if any other commissioners are here yet. I do not see anybody. So Dina Quezada is not present. Leah LaBelle is not present. Liza Birkin is not yet present either. Alex Ellis from the Department of Planning and Development. And I will announce other commissioners as they join, because I do expect a couple other people.
All right, so our next item is approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Do any of the commissioners have any edits or comments on the minutes from last month? There was actually 2 meetings last month. This is officially the July 29th, 2020 minutes. Okay, would someone like to move to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve. Ed Rath.
Daniel would like to second.
Yes.
Okay, we'll vote. I am in favor. Everyone else?
Aye.
Great. Now, Alex.
Did Daniel vote? Sorry, I didn't do that.
Okay, Alex is going to go over the commission procedures, and specifically the procedures we're trying to adhere to on this Zoom version of our meeting. So I'll let Alex take that over.
Thanks, Jeff. Welcome, everyone. I see currently 2 members of City Council present as well, Council President Sabina Matos and Councilman Pedro Espinal. And I'll, if you want to speak, members of council, feel free to raise your hand on Zoom and I'll recognize you. So next, just at every meeting, we go over some of the basics of how this meeting, how this commission runs. So first of all, there are a number of avenues through which projects come before the commission. It could be directly from the Gray Streets Plan. They could be from constituents. Members of City Council can bring items to this commission's attention. Or as in this case, there can be another city project or even a state project that is falls within the commission's purview. Just recognizing Liza Birkin, another commission member, is present now. When those projects come before the commission, they are reviewed twice. The executive order that governs this commission stipulates that twice during project development, once during the conceptual phase, which is kind of early when we have an idea of what the project will look like, and not too much more than a rough idea. And then again at 30% design are the 2 times that projects come before the commission. After each of those reviews, the commission's recommendations are considered by city staff, or if it's a state project, we are forwarded to the state. And sometimes those are able to be integrated and sometimes they are not. Ultimately, many of these projects move to construction. Also going to recognize Emily Koo, who's here for the Sustainability Department. Why is this commission's purview important? So this is the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. One of the reasons for this commission's work is access, to make sure that people in Providence can get where they're going, whether or not they have access to a car. It's also about equity, the quality of life improvements in terms of pedestrian safety and everything in this commission's purview should benefit different parts of the city fairly, independent of where they're happening in the city in terms of who lives there. And finally, this work is important for the reasons of justice. Historically and too often in the present, transportation planning decisions have negative impacts, unhealthy impacts on poor neighborhoods and communities of color in our city and all over the country. And we want the decisions that we make today as a city to help address those harms and just be better decisions for people's lives than traditional decision-making procedures. So those are some of the reasons why this commission does the work it does. So the structure of these meetings, the chair will introduce each agenda item. Today we only have one a real agenda item. The staff report, usually I present the staff report, sometimes someone else. Commission will discuss when the commission has resolved any clarifying questions, that sort of thing. The chair will open up public comment. When that is done, the chair will close public comment. Any other commission discussion will occur, and then a vote if appropriate. So procedures for virtual meetings, we're all getting more used to these now, but just want to make sure everyone is clear what our process is here. So the Q&A function in Zoom is how we most like to take public comment, because then we can, sometimes we can answer them directly via text in the Q&A feature, but more often the chair or I will read those comments into the record at a break in the action, as it were. If you prefer to speak your comments, you can do so by using the raise hand feature, which I believe is *9 if you're on the phone. I don't see anyone who's joined us on the phone right now, but I might be missing something. And once you've raised your hand, the chair will, or I will recognize you at an appropriate time, and you can speak then. And in that situation, because we want to be careful that we are staying on task, just ask that you state your name and the street where you live on. Doesn't have to be in Providence. This is an open public meeting. But just to clarify that we're all here to talk about the commission's purview. I believe that is the extent of that housekeeping.
Okay, great. So like Alex said, we have one item to review, and it is the citywide repaving program. This is a conceptual review, and Alex will go over the staff report for us.
Great. So those of you who have been around for a little while may recall just about 2 years ago, in 2018, the first capital improvement program featured a repaving of a number of city streets, and came before this commission, actually in several parts for review, so that this commission could make recommendations for ways that bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure could efficiently be brought to some of those streets. It is it's a very small additional cost, often, if at all, to integrate some of the features this commission tends to look at into a plan when it is being repaved, compared to when it is not being repaved, or if it has already been repaved, coming in after the fact. Often we struggle to find the funds to integrate some of these improvements. So it's a really wonderful opportunity for efficiency and cost savings for the city to look at these projects early in the design of repaving, so that we can try to coordinate where possible. So that context aside, what you're looking at on the screen now is the urban trail network map from the city's Great Streets Plan, which was released in January 2020. And the different lines in there mean different things. I apologize if it's too small. But so down at the bottom there is the note that I just said about how it is more efficient to do these things now. Separate from the repaving, there are a number of projects that are in various stages of public engagement or design that the planning department is sort of running independently of the paving effort. So what we'll focus on in the staff report here is street segments that are both on the paving plan. So we have a pretty good sense that they're likely to be repaved, and they're in the Great Streets Plan. And it's a handful of streets. It's not that high a proportion of the paving streets, but I do want to offer the opportunity for commissioners to bring us to other streets that are being repaved, if you want to discuss them. 2 years ago when we discussed this, we did not have a Great Streets Plan, so the decisions made by the commission were a little more ad hoc. But currently we have the Great Streets Plan, and these are the streets that we think are good streets to focus on for urban trail improvements, but it's a living plan. It can be changed. So feel free to chime in with other streets if you want. The streets where these two plans overlap. Let me describe this map first of all. So the streets that are colored in on the map are the streets that are on the most recent iteration of the repaving plan. When is this happening? I believe some of these streets might happen in 2020 before the winter. Most of them are likely to happen in 2021. The red streets are sort of all the streets that are not highlighted on the left to talk about tonight. But again, those can be discussed if the commission would like to. Also want to recognize Councilwoman Yerba Fortune, who I believe just joined us. The blue streets here, you can see on the legend, that's Mount Pleasant Ave and Broad Street, are essentially state projects where the city, through the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program, is supplementing that RIDOT funding with paving. So they're slightly different projects, but both have a significant state role. The yellow streets are the streets that are, again, the more overlap between the Great Streets Plan and the paving plan. So the blue streets and the yellow streets are the streets that are on both plans. I'll note that often those are not the entire street. They're usually just small segments, and you'll probably recognize, if you're familiar with them, that those are places with some of the worst paving, the worst potholes and that sort of thing. So the final feature on the map that I wanted to highlight is the Great Streets Plan also identifies intersections throughout the city that for various reasons are in need of improvement. Those could be because those intersections have seen a large number of crashes involving bicycles and pedestrians. It could be because the intersections are just really wide intersections with long crossings. It could be that they're complicated intersections with confusing turning movements. Or it could be during the public process for the Great Streets Plan, someone brought it up or multiple people brought it up. So we wanted to include those in the plan as well. So any one of those intersections highlighted in the plan that is on or adjacent to one of the repaving streets is also included on this map. So you'll note that those dotted lines on the left sort of divide that into 4 sections of types of streets that we're going to talk about tonight. So there's a number of these. Let's get right through them. And Again, if you have any comments, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and the chair and I will get to them at when it makes sense to do so. So the first of these, Broad Street, this commission has talked about before. The City Walk project has been going for several years now. Really, the concept for City Walk has been around for much longer. The basic idea for this project is to keep on-street parking throughout, a conventional bike lane north of Public Street, which is, north of Plenty Street, which is a little bit north of that, that blue dot, up Trinity Square. And then from that point, Plenty Street down to the entrance to Roger Williams Park, a two-way urban trail on the west side of the street. In addition to that urban trail and the bike lanes, curb ramp improvements are proposed throughout the corridor, bus service improvements, and a couple other pedestrian improvements throughout the corridor. So again, this is part of the City Walk project, which is funded by the state, which is why that's blue. Continuing along, Mount Pleasant Avenue is a state project through the Highway Safety Improvement Program. That's the HSIP you see there. The city is working with RIDOT to finalize engineering on this, including the two-way protected bicycle facility, pedestrian safety improvements, and speed reduction improvements on the street. So the repaving is the city's contribution to the RIDOT work, because that street, I believe, was in need of repaving or separate from that project.
Alex, can I interrupt you just for a second? Councilperson LaFortune asked if this could be shared with the public. And could you just
Absolutely.
explain what this is on the planning website? Or is it on the planning website?
So,
Now, this presentation probably isn't, but the staff report is.
right. So this presentation is very similar to, and I apologize for not mentioning this earlier, it is basically reflecting the staff report in PowerPoint format. So the staff report is currently on the BPAC website, which is accessible from the planning page of the city's website, under boards and commissions, and you go to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. But I am also happy to share this presentation. It's the same information. Okay. Thank you for that comment, Councilwoman LaFortune. Angel Street. So those were the two streets that are state projects that the city is contributing repaving to. Now we're on to a couple of projects that that are slightly more complex, but are overlaps there. So Angel Street is the first one. We're looking just at the hill by RISD between Prospect and Benefit Streets. So the Gray Streets plan proposes a future one-way urban trail on both Waterman and Angel all the way across the east side. That's a big project with a lot of complexity. And it's probably, for that whole project, further in the future. However, the opportunity of the repaving suggests taking a look at whether it makes sense to coordinate now on the stretch that's being repaved. So we've mentioned this to RISD. They have a big priority for pedestrian crossing safety, especially on this stretch across Angel. They have a new building there. They want to make sure the crossing is safe. And so the construction of that new building involved closing portions of this block for periods of construction. So we have some evidence from that as to what it looks like when it's reduced to one lane on this section. That said, it's a significant street that probably still needs some study before making those improvements. So at the end of this run through of the streets, there are some staff recommendations. These next couple do have callouts in there. Okay. Next one of these is the second of two streets. They're in that second category that are more significant changes to the street, not so big as the Mount Pleasant corridor and the Broad Street corridor. So West River Street is right with the Stop and Shop on Branch Ave. It's between Branch Avenue and Corliss Street, which is where the post office is, right in between the two highways. This is close to the border between the Charles neighborhood and the Mount Hope neighborhood. And I apologize, Councilwoman LaFortune, for not knowing exactly which one this is. It might even be the border. But regardless, I think you are all hopefully well situated with that information. So the Gray Streets plan proposed a future two-way urban trail connecting Branch Ave and Ashburton. This is a significant connection for the urban trail network because crossing the highways is very challenging. And there's only so many places where you can get across in a way that feels safe if you're on foot or on bike. So this is a location that the urban trail network specifies. It's a very wide street. It's 40 feet wide. There's not really much on-street parking on this street. I don't have the numbers, but I think we can all agree it's likely pretty high truck traffic, Stop and Shop and other industrial areas right there. So there might be some opportunity with that width to just go ahead and do what's in the Gray Streets plan. So moving along, the rest of these are mostly neighborhood greenways. So they are traffic calming and shared lane markings and signage improvements that are in the plan. So those are smaller interventions. So Amherst Street in Olneyville between Valley and Tuxedo Ave, very short one block street here that the commission at the last meeting actually maybe at the public meeting that was very similar to the last BPAC meeting. We talked about the street. This has been on the planning department's radar for neighborhood greenway to help make that connection for the Woonasquatucket River Greenway, which has a segment in Denisian Park right across Valley Street from Amherst Street, and another segment in Eagle Square right across Atwells from Tuxedo Ave. So the two of those streets are independent of the paving. The planning department was planning to put shared lane markings on next spring. So that is the first of those neighborhood greenways. Next one is similar, Waverly Street in the West End. You may recall this from the Slow Streets program. It's also, we talked about it at the last BPAC meeting and at the neighborhood meeting about neighborhood greenways. So a lot of overlaps in this street and might be an opportunity to get that in there. Yes, great. So next one, we're starting to get now into neighborhood greenways proposed in the Gray Streets plan that are not planned, that had not been planned separate from the repaving for near-term implementation, but with the opportunity of the repaving might be worth looking into. So one of those is Rousseau Street up in Charles. This is an important connection in the urban trail network that's proposed in the Great Streets plan to provide access to that northern portion of the Charles neighborhood. Charles Street itself is an obvious connector, but it is not very wide, and it's busy and not very wide, and that combination means it's very challenging to incorporate any sort of urban trail safe connection on Charles Street itself. So Rousseau runs parallel to that. Rousseau also, there is an off-street connection north of the repaving area that would allow connecting up to Hagen Street. So the repaving area is just between Paul Street and I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but Nahant Street, a relatively short segment. So I think I touched on everything there. The arrows and that call out just indicate the extent of what the Great Streets plan calls for in terms of that connection.
There's a couple more questions, Alex.
Yeah,
And is
great. So
the fact that the meeting is being recorded, does the city have the capability to share that recording? I don't know what the city's doing with the recordings.
yeah, so we have been posting them, not all the time. We posted the one for the Neighborhood Greenways meeting we had in late August, and we're happy to post them. So I will post this as well on the BPAC page. Another
The other was the clarification on what a shero is.
Wonderful. I apologize for not including visuals in the presentation for these features. The shero is the, a lot of people talk about it as a chevron. It's the bike symbol with the chevron that you see in some streets. And it indicates that this is a route for bicycling that is a shared lane. So there's no designated bike lane on that street. So that is the meaning of that. And for the appropriate placement for those is on streets that are already low traffic or are low speed because of traffic calming. They're a component of a neighborhood greenway. Okay, so Rousseau Street, again, that's what we'd be talking about for Rousseau Street and the others that I'm talking about in this part of this report. Shared lane markings and speed lumps are the main features that you'll see on those streets. All right, next one, Camp Street. So the repaving area is between Cypress Street and Rochambeau Ave. This is also a neighborhood greenway that's planned for the future. Again, this has not been planned for near-term implementation independent of the paving project, but it might be an opportunity to make some of those improvements in a low-cost fashion. So we can talk more about any of these later. Benefit Street, north of Angel Street, up to about Halsey Street is on the repaving list. There have been some conversations with the neighbor group there previously about some of the factors there that I've been part of. And again, this and these other streets in this section are might be a good opportunity to make some improvements as specified in the plan. Continuing on, Elmgrove, Doyle, and Upton Avenues. I combined these because they're all in the same area. And similar to the past couple, in the plan, weren't planned for near term as an opportunity. So you'll note there's a lot of streets being repaved around here. That often happens when there's a section of the street that was all repaved at the same time and it's all deteriorating at the same time. Also, sometimes it happens when the utility companies, which are often out tearing up streets, they often do work in clusters like this. So that could have happened at some point that tore up this whole area of the neighborhood, and it makes sense to repave them all at once. Doyle and Upton, I see a hand up. We'll go to that in a second. Doyle and Upton are continuations of the same street, basically. We're looking at between Hope Street and Blackton Boulevard. And it changes from Doyle to Upton at Elmgrove. Elmgrove was one of the streets in the Great Streets Plan that had the most people saying, let's include this street in the Great Streets Plan. And so we did as a neighborhood greenway. And the repaving section of Elmgrove Ave is between Sessions and President Ave. So just one last street segment here. This is a very short street segment in Olneyville, right by Riverside Park, from Manton Ave to King Street. And this is right by the Woonasquatucket River Greenway. It's a really valuable access point to it. And it, I have not been on Sheridan Street a great deal myself, but my sense is that because it's so short, many times of the day it is is relatively low traffic. However, some improvements might be possible to make it feel safe for walking and biking more of the time. So that is all of the street segments that are overlap between the paving plan and the Gray Streets plan. This last slide looks at intersections. So there are 2 intersections each on Mount Pleasant Ave and Broad Street that are highlighted in the Great Streets plan. I don't focus this map on those because each of those state plans already integrate improvements for often these are for walkability for pedestrians. So the 5 additional intersections are Orm Street at Smith and Pleasant Valley Parkway, Camp Street at Evergreen, Angel at Benefit, or Benefit at Angel, really Benefit at Thomas, which is the downhill side of Angel, that whole intersection. And then Federal at Dean in Federal Hill. Now, a feature of most of these is that the bigger street is the one that is not getting repaved. So the Dean, Pleasant Valley Parkway, and Smith are likely, I'm not sure how much there is that can be done about those intersection issues as part of this repaving project because the issue may not be on the repaving street. Camp and Evergreen and Angel Benefit, though, potentially might be more feasible. So just to maybe, well, I'll just read off the council president's comment about Sheridan Street, which is in her ward, saying traffic has increased after the new housing in that area. So that makes sense. Staff recommendations for all of what I have just gone through is that on the neighborhood greenways, traffic calming and shared lane markings should be installed following repaving. So repaving should happen, and then when it is restriped as part of the repaving, it should have the neighborhood greenway improvements put in there. West River Street should be striped with a 2-way urban trail following repaving. Because it's so wide, there's more space than the use potentially demands. Seems like that might be an easy case. Third one, Angel Street, it's a little bit more complicated, so evaluation should occur. And then finally, similarly, evaluation should happen for those highlighted intersections to see if it's possible to improve them as well. So I believe that is it for the staff report. And Jeff, might I suggest for seeing if any of the members of City Council would like to, looks like Councilman Espinal might have had to depart, but we still have Councilwoman LaFortune and Council President Matos.
Yes, certainly if they want to.
I need to do something to clicking allowed to talk for both members of City Council. Great. Council President.
Hi, thank you. I was actually just typing in the question. When you were talking about Sheridan and you mentioned that about the traffic is not that much, actually after the development of 60 King and also the new construction that's happening all around King Street that is being done by one neighborhood builder, that has been increasing the traffic in Sheridan, on Sheridan Street. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you.
Councilwoman LaFortune, do you have anything that you wanted to raise about your neighborhood?
Yeah, so the question I had, and thank you for this is a really great presentation. I do, since I'm such a visual person, I do enjoy the graphics that you provided us. And as you know, I'm someone who's really a big advocate of creating green green streets that are accessible to all commuters. And so I'm so excited for this. I wanted to know in terms of like Camp Street and also around the Branch Street area, when will these projects begin? And also with Branch, Cypress actually leads into Branch Avenue. So will there be some sort of connection between Branch Avenue and Cypress Street? Because right now there's a significant intersection. It is quite difficult to cross the street. And North Main Street overall is a challenge because it is a heavy traffic area. There's no bike lanes, which is something that I've been, Bonnie and I have been talking about a redesign and reviewing some of the previous plans that have been put in place for North Main Street and just trying to create a more accessible, and walkable, bikeable, drivable corridor. But how are we connecting these projects with one another, and when will the projects begin?
Thank you. So I got 3 questions from that. First of all, about timing. I'm not sure exactly the timing, and I'm just going to do a quick pass of the attendees to make sure we don't have anyone from DPW here. DPW is managing this process. And so the last information I have from our Deputy City Engineer, Craig Hockman, is that most of these projects will be repaved in the spring. And more specific than that, I can't tell you right now, I don't know. A few of the projects, he said, might be possible to get in this year, but I can follow up to see which of those he said. But the bulk of them next year. So I also, you had a question about Cypress Street and Branch Ave. So Camp Street is being repaved in between Cypress and Rochambeau. Cypress, to the best knowledge I had, is not on the repaving map. I know City Council has been involved in some of these conversations, so I'm not sure if that's different. Branch Ave also is relevant for West River Street over on the other side, but Branch Ave itself, there's a separate project that the Commission did review recently on Branch Ave, helping with traffic flow at the off-ramps on Branch Ave, Savers and Stop and Shop. And
yeah, and that project already, oh, sorry, so sorry, Alice.
Oh, it's just that and near the Old Benny's, both directions of off ramps.
Yes, that project. So so before that started, Bonnie and I had met with the developer. So basically, that was part of their whole kind of like project for where the Old Benny's. They had to change the traffic flow from the off ramp. So that, I believe that project has started, or it's going to begin. I was just curious, since it's such that whole area, there's just so much traffic. And with the repaving, just trying to think of how can we incorporate, safer streets concepts, so that we can just make it more safer, for all commuters.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this commission reviewed that RIDOT project for the traffic signals at the off ramps a couple months ago. And finally, Councilwoman, you mentioned North Main Street. I think you gave pretty much the update that I would give there. It is a state road. I know that some of my colleagues in the planning department are looking at that street, and I'm sure talking with you as well. So it's a challenge because it is a state road. It is such a major road, but potentially some opportunity as well. So thank you, members of City Council. Jeff, I go back to you to have further conversation.
Yeah, there are a few questions and a few hands up, but I think we'll stick to doing commission discussion before we get to those. So if the commissioners, go to your tab, if you guys want to unmute yourselves so we can start conversing. Alex, I just was wondering, maybe I wasn't paying attention, but how were the intersections identified?
So there were a number of, similar to this commission, there were a number of avenues through which intersections got into the plan. The most basic were if there were numerous comments about a particular intersection being difficult, during the public outreach process for the Great Streets Plan. Another clear-cut one, we looked at crash data, and the intersections with some of the most crashes in the city were included in that list as well. We also looked at intersections that were very wide, so a lot of long pedestrian crossings. We also looked at complex intersections, say that have 5 streets coming off from them, or a weird angle, that sort of thing. There may have been a couple other factors as well that led to intersections being in here, but we tried to cast a wide net with intersections.
And so just related to the repaving program, because I mean, we could all walk around the city and identify the majority of the intersections as a problem, like all of them on North Main, for example.
Sure.
Okay.
So yes, it's just the ones that are on the repaving program that are included in this presentation.
Okay.
Alex, in that regard, the intersection between Camp Street and Rochambeau, it's kind of tricky as well. There's that Dana Street. So if we could potentially recommend adding that one to be looked at once they do the repaving, that'd be great.
And that intersection has some pretty strong traffic calming, like Rochambeau next down when it reaches camp. There's a lot done to that intersection, but it's still, you're right, it's not great. There's a lot of people climbing the hill on Rochambeau tend to try to run the stop sign if they can, because they just don't want to lose momentum or something. It's a 4-way stop, but it should be safer than it is. So I mean, I don't know what
More
else.
than a 4-way, it's a 5-way.
Yeah, it's true.
And that this street should be shut down on that side. That shouldn't be there should be a closed street there. There's no reason to have that through there. It just causes problems.
Yeah, if you're going on camp, you never know where to stop because it's kind of a long stop. It's a little bit confusing in my view.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost had an accident there the other day in my car, just for that very reason.
Alex, when RISD, or when the city spoke to RISD about Angel, does RISD have anything specific that they've asked for, or are they just asking for general traffic calming for the city to come up with a plan?
So RISD has been in conversations about a number of spots around their campus with the city. We've had a number of meetings with Nate, the traffic engineer, and RISD about some. On Angel Street, and in general, these concerns were mostly about pedestrian safety, crossings at various places. At Angel Street, like I said, there's a recently new building in between Angel and Waterman, and there's another building on the north side of Angel on Prospect, I believe, that is another destination for students. So that crossing sort of mid-block on Angel Hill is growing in pedestrian demand for RISD's campus plan. So they've been in touch with us about that. And in general, that block on the hill in between Angel and Waterman is sort of a locus, and crossing in every direction from that is
So that could be something, a holistic thing we could look at in a future meeting.
Yeah. I also just wanted to note that Councilwoman LaFortune in the Q&A says, yes, people run the stop sign at camp. Nate, the traffic engineer, just did a traffic study on Rochambeau. That's more information.
Yeah, Rochambeau is a difficult one because the way it's built, it actually should operate really well, but you know, the lanes are pretty narrow, but it's still, I would love to hear what they had to say about it.
So Jeff, we have 2 hands up and 3 comments in the Q&A. Would you like to have any more commission discussion, or do you want to get to some of those?
I think unless any of the other commissioners, I think we'll certainly talk more after public, but I'm fine with opening up to public discussion.
I have one quick thing.
Okay.
I think you said earlier that that the list of streets is subject to change. And I think we have seen sometimes a street gets higher priority and then is suddenly included in the list. And I'm just wondering if there's any way kind of to be prepared, like any kind of rapid response plan that could be put together so that if a street is suddenly added to the repaving list and it does coincide with great streets, then there would be just a way to additional layer of potentially not missing opportunities. I don't know if that makes sense.
Like for them to come before BPAC if they get added to the list at a later date.
Yeah, that could be one thing, certainly. It's not like you can have 30% design plans for every single street on the great streets list just in case it gets repaved. I'm not suggesting that, but I don't know if there are models from other cities, or I'm not really sure. But
so 2 points on that. One, DPW has the Great Streets Plan and is very aware of their trail network plan. So that's a first line of defense, if you will.
Yeah.
Secondly, there have not been a lot of changes since May. This basic plan was at that time, and the changes between then and now were quite minor. There were just a couple minor streets here and there were shifting. So that's some context. And just finally, the reason we're talking about this month is that this plan needs to move along to be on schedule for bidding in time for the potential fall and then spring. That is sometimes a long process. So those are just some points in context for that.
I have one quick thing, Alex. Just mainly a question because I'm not sure. When these repavings are done, and I agree with the sharrows and other street markings that should go with that. Is there anything or any planning or money that goes towards more signage, like the my pet sign, which is the bicycles may use the full lane?
It's a good question. My sense is that signage changes are not usually part of these packages, except where a change significant enough to merit a new sign is included. But as a matter of course, generally signage is not included in this. That said, that sounds like the sort of thing that could be a commission recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
So, Jeff, I believe the order of hands up was Tracy Picard had her hand up first, and then Brian Power, and then Doug, and then there's some comments as well. Oh.
I think Tracy had her hand up for quite a while, or though it went away. All right. If you just want to start reading and calling on people, trust your judgment on who went in what order.
I'm going to hit allow to talk for Tracy. Tracy, I believe you can unmute yourself now. Hello?
Hello, sorry, that was an accident.
Oh, the hand?
Yeah, I'm commuting, sorry.
Oh, no worries. All right. Great. So since some of these Q&A comments were in there before the next hand, I'm just going to read those really quick. First of all, David Kolsky says, 1, what exactly is a neighborhood greenway? And 2, what does staff recommend or plan for federal and Dean? So just generally, I think I went over this briefly before, but a neighborhood greenway is a type of urban trail improvement that is on a street that is low volume or low speed, which those streets don't need a lot to make them feel safe to walk and bike on. What we usually do is put speed lumps on to calm traffic, slow the cars down, which does a lot in terms of making them feel safer. And then we also put out shared lane markings, which I described earlier, those bike symbols with the chevrons. And additionally, at a later point, we like to put more signage out, wayfinding signage, that sort of thing, in the greenways. Secondly, what is planned for Federal and Dean. So the details of that, I'm not sure exactly for what reason that went into the intersections in the plan, but basically there's no specific recommendations that are included here for that. Just look into it and see if it can be made more pedestrian friendly as part of this project. I will say for that one, my guess is no, because it's Federal Street that is getting repaved, and Dean Street is probably the bigger source of the pedestrian difficulty there.
That street it's a very complicated, it's not just Federal and Dean, it's Federal, Dean, Kenyon, and Broad. And it was rebuilt probably 10 years ago, and it's much better than it was, but it's not perfect. And judging from some prior BPAC and community meetings, I know there's residents on Bond Street who really don't like Bond Street being used as a cut through to avoid traffic backing up on Dean. There is a speed lump on Bond Street to help with that right now. But I would love to see that intersection come back to BPAC so we could talk about it. But like you said, with Kenyon being the one being paved, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of opportunity to fix the Dean part.
Staff recommendation, though, is to look into all of those intersections and see if there's something that can be done. So Jeff, the next hand, I believe, was from Brian. Brian, I'm going to allow you to talk, and I think you can unmute yourself if you would like.
All right. Thanks, Commission. Thanks, Alex. So my name is Brian Paré. I live on Edgewood Boulevard, so right on Roger Williams Park. Avid road cyclist and commuter, so I actually commute up to Woonsocket quite a bit for my day job, back and forth. So the infrastructure is great here. New to Providence, love the bike infrastructure we have. My question is, living on the Roger Williams Park area, one of the major cut-throughs that has been used for recreation or commuting has been Allen's Avenue. So my question for the commission is there any plan to at least have Allen's Avenue cleaned up because there's lots of debris, there's lots of sand that continues to be on the road, or some way that Allen's Avenue can be, a bit improved to be a little bit more bicycle friendly. And I look forward to, coming to more of these meetings. Great session and great conversation.
And Jeff, I can answer a couple of those. So there's also another question about Allen's Ave in the Q&A. David Boyd says, it appears that Allen's Ave, a state road, is being repaved right now. Do we know what the final plan is for the project? Will a separated bike path be present? So David raises one of the biggest points on Allen's Ave is that it is a state road. This commission has talked about it a little bit in the past. The project that is going on now on Allen's Ave is a state project to make some signal improvements, I believe, is the main focus of that project. I believe some slight curb line changes at Thurbers Ave are happening. Like a year and a half ago or so, I met with some RIDOT folks, with some of my colleagues, and so it is included in the Great Streets Plan to both of your questions for improvement with a two-way separated urban trail, improvements to the railroad crossings, which are a big deal, and also that that debris issue is something that a lot of people talk about on Allen's Ave. So unfortunately, at that meeting a while ago, RIDOT said, we don't have enough budget for that. We're really just focusing on these signal improvements, this small scope. So at that time, we really tried to get them to incorporate that, and we're unsuccessful. So the fact that it's a state road means that it is outside of the city's jurisdiction to go in and make those improvements that we would all like to see, which is unfortunate. It remains in our plan, and you know, the long-term negotiations with the state on that continue. Relatedly, just want to flag some of the neighborhood activism, and it's too bad that Councilman Espinal isn't here anymore because he's been really involved with this in his ward there, around various aspects of Allens Ave, public water access, pollution, and in general improving quality of life on Allens Ave. So that's another more recent initiative, and I encourage you to get in touch with the Washington Park Association or Councilman Espinal about some of those recent issues.
Great, thank you.
Great. So let's see. How about bouncing back to the Q&A? We have two notes about streets that weren't specifically mentioned in the staff report. One from Eric Weiss noting that Hopkins Street is on the repaving list. It's a critical pedestrian failure as court employees park on the narrow sidewalk all day. Paving should be accompanied by enforcement. Additionally, David Kolsky says crossing Benefit on the southern side of Waterman is very perilous because it's not directly visible to traffic turning right from climbing Waterman. So I'll note on that one, there was a recent improvement, which I expect David has seen, to that intersection of Waterman and Benefit, upgrading the signal there so that at least there is an opportunity for safe crossing across the diagonal, which is a common crossing, many RISD students, but others as well, of course, of that Waterman Benefit intersection, noted on both counts. So trying to get to all these folks. Jeff, I think Doug.
I think the hands go in order.
I know, that's what I'm assuming too. So I'm going to allow Doug to talk. Hi, Doug.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you very much. You know, I think these meetings are the best, and I think the Zoom is terrific because I don't have to go anywhere and don't have to fight traffic or anything. Anyways, I just wanted to do two things very shortly. Brian, who just spoke from down near the Roger Williams Park, there's a Washington Park Neighborhood Association meeting tonight, a Zoom meeting at 6 o'clock. And I'd be happy to send Brian the information on that. I've also been involved in the Allens Avenue Port of Providence questions, and I think there'll be a lot for you. You will be very, I don't know, I imagine you'll be very pleased when you hear of the type of advocacy that is coming out of the Washington Park group. So, so know that. It's interesting that the Rochambeau Camp Street intersection was on the agenda tonight because I had the opportunity to go by there, to go kind of through there, but I chose actually not to turn, but to go straight up Rochambeau because I feel like, you know, I don't know that area very well, and so I feel like there's a couple different ways that area, maybe even more, is used. And it's really confusing for somebody, and I didn't have GPS with me, so it's really confusing to kind of figure out where, because I was going to Colonial Street or Colonial Drive. It was really confusing to figure out where the street is in relationship to the other street, because I don't know that part of the city very well. So I was kind of tentative about coming, and all these people who maybe seemed like they knew the neighborhood were zipping through. And the combination is just not good. So what I would like to ask or suggest is that, you know, a kind of a progressive traffic study be done at that intersection to really help to identify what might support more sense in that intersection?
Doug, I
Because
believe Councilwoman LaFortune, when she was still here, the traffic engineer just did a traffic study of
what I did. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's it.
Thank
We're
you.
done.
So Jeff, next we have CJ Opethauser. CJ, I'm going to allow you to talk.
Guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everybody. I have a slightly off-topic comment. Well, I guess first I actually want to second Eric's remark about in the question and answer section about Hopkins Street. I live on the east side, and basically because the north side of Hopkins Street up on the sidewalk is usually full of vehicles parking up on the sidewalk, that sidewalk is basically inaccessible. So I agree with him in his comment that enforcement of some sort should follow that opportunity of repaving. Just a really quick sort of side comment, if you'll allow me. I think I'm glad to be seeing this presentation, but I think one glaring kind of omission at this meeting is a chance to look at and speak about all this, all this talk about, breaking up the bus hub at Kennedy Plaza downtown and kind of redistributing bus activity from there. And it occurs to me that, because the BPAC got to review and have public comment and thoughts and input about previous conceptual designs for Kennedy Plaza, not that long ago even, that, we ought to be having that same process happen right now. And if there's any way to make that happen, I think that would be really important and, transparent. And I hope that can maybe be coming before the BPAC at the next meeting or something. So that's it. Thank you very much.
All right. So the way these meetings are structured, generally, we do need to keep to the, but thank you for your comment. So the final hand that we have up is from Eric, who I'm going to allow to talk now. Eric, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Is it possible for me to share my screen so I can show everybody a photograph to accompany my comments?
Unfortunately, I don't believe the way this meeting is set up in Zoom that is possible.
Okay, that's fine. So Hopkins Street again. This has been an issue for years. DPW refuses to do anything about it. The Governor's Commission on Disabilities, despite the fact that the sidewalk is unusable, also refuses to do anything about it. And the management of the courthouse itself, and all of these people parking on the sidewalk and making the sidewalk unusable, they're all courthouse employees. And the courthouse management also refuses to do anything about it. So I'm at my wit's end here. And everybody who I've talked to at the city and state level, they just don't care. And that's simply unacceptable. We have courthouse employees breaking the law every single day, making the sidewalk impassable. And so I'm throwing myself in front of the BPAC saying, you're my last hope here for pedestrian rights and civic civility. Something has to be done here. And we have the repaving coming soon. And I have one idea for making this happen in a way that does not involve ticketing every single day, all of these vehicles, because the police won't do anything about it either. I should have mentioned that, which is to make Hopkins a one-way street so that there's room on the street itself for parking. And with the repaving, paint parking stalls on the street so that all these, I'll just call them scofflaws in order to try to keep my manners, will not park on the sidewalk anymore. So I don't know if it's too late to do the study that would lead to a recommendation to turn Hopkins into a one-way. It's simply too narrow to be a two-way anyway. So it shouldn't take too much analysis, but that's my comment. And I really hope the BPAC can make some sort of recommendation to Public Works on behalf of pedestrians in the courthouse area. Thanks.
I'm looking at Street View and it has a do not enter sign at the bottom of the hill. So it might be one way already.
Yeah, and for smaller streets like that, it is usually up to the traffic engineer to make a proposal to City Council to convert something to one way. There has been a philosophy for a lot of people in the city over the past while that one way is less safe than two way. It's probably more nuanced than that, and I think the traffic engineer would might consider that option. So it sounds like it might indeed solve that problem.
Well, something has to be done here, and as I mentioned, Leo Parada, I spoke with him. He's not going to do anything about it. I talked to the woman who's in charge of the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. She's not going to do anything about it. She said the street is too steep for people in wheelchairs to use anyway. And that kind of knocked my socks off. But she literally said that to me. So painting parking stalls on the street accompanied by new signage that says, absolutely no parking on the sidewalk. I have no hope that city parking enforcement will do anything about it because it's been like this. It's been like this for years, but there's got to be a solution, and it's got to come as a recommendation from the body that I'm sitting in front of right now. Thank you for listening to my rant.
Thanks.
Jeff, we have one Q&A comment in relation to a previous verbal comment saying bus redesign is a state activity. Commenter who's anonymous, yes, that's basically true. This commission does, however, occasionally make recommendations for the city to convey something to the state. So it's not entirely out of purview, although it is not super related to the agenda. All right, that is all of the Q&As and hands that were up. So Jeff, I don't know how you want to proceed at this point.
Just a few other, I don't know if they actually need to be motions, but when Councilperson Matos was talking about Sheridan in her ward, Sheridan came before us like quite a while ago, before the housing development went in there, and I have not been there since it was developed, so I don't know what the conditions are there now. But I do remember the developer being very amenable to traffic calming and wanting that as an amenity for their housing. It's a very important connection to the Greenway. So maybe we could get Sheridan on our agenda for next month so we can look at it more specifically. I know there's no plans other than to put new pavement down, so there's nothing really to review, but maybe if we looked at it more holistically and maybe asked the developer if they had any input. Because it was so long ago, I don't remember what we recommended, but I think King Street was planning to be closed, and we're trying to make a better connection from the Greenway bike path to Sheridan Street and then up to Manton Avenue. So I don't know if there's something we can do at a subsequent meeting before the pavement happens to just give that area another look, review what we looked at before and what the current conditions are. Do you think that needs to be a motion, or is that just a suggestion from Commissioner for a topic?
Either way, the suggestions for future agendas are really just go straight to me. So if you feel strongly that I'm not going to do what you ask, you can.
I don't. And then I was taking notes about the other, like you said, the intersections. There's no plans for them right now, as the city can, or does it make sense? There will be plans that I assume will come back to us if they're made.
So my sense is that this is the conceptual review for this paving. 2 years ago, it was also that paving was also reviewed at 30% design. So the commission got 2 passes at it. I expect something similar will happen this time, although for the streets that are planned for expedited repaving this fall, I'm not sure if those will, and I think those are likely mostly smaller streets, and it's a very small number if that even does happen.
Right.
So those might not come back, but most of them I assume will.
So in the staff recommendations, which we should talk about whether or not we're going to move to recommend them, everything is pretty simple. Shared lane markings on the greenways, evaluation of a road diet on Angel, which probably won't necessarily happen with the paving because it needs more planning, but certainly do that. And then we just talked about the highlighted intersections, but the biggest intervention that the staff recommends is a 2-way trail on West River. And I think that BPAC needs to see better engineering of how that would look before we recommend it. We always have the issues of what happens at either end of a 2-way trail. So that needs to be just run through, I think. I think it would be great to hear from RISD at a future meeting about their concerns, not just with Angel, but any other part of their campus and surrounding areas. So that's all I'm thinking about. Any other commissioners have any thoughts about what we reviewed? Are we still in quorum? It looks like someone dropped off.
I think Liza dropped off.
Liza dropped off, but we still have.
Yeah, I was not counting myself.
Alex, my question about the sign, would that be something that's an addendum to staff recommendations or something we make a motion to add?
So the way recommendations work is if the commission wants to adopt the staff recommendations, that is often a motion, sometimes with amendment, and then other motions can be whatever motions that you want to make. So that could be one of those.
All right.
Daniel, do you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, just the camp and Russian bow piece was the only one in my mind.
So I think as far as Camp and Rochambeau were concerned, did the councilwoman say they were, or she was just talking about Cypress?
She noted that there was a recent traffic study about Camp Rochambeau, and I think in saying that, she was suggesting that she agreed that that was a tricky intersection. Oh, she did say there was a stop sign running on that intersection as well. So she at least is aware of that, as is the traffic engineer.
So, I mean, like I was making recommendations. I think Daniel's making a recommendation as well, that's something that we should look at in the future.
Jeff, in relation to West River Street, what you were saying, one suggestion might be to amend that staff recommendation to be more similar to the Angel Street one, the evaluation, if that is something that you want to do.
No, I want it to be striped as a 2-way trail. I just want it to come back to us before it gets past 30%.
I think, yeah, so if you want to do that, you could adopt staff recommendations and then say a separate motion about you want whatever to come back at 30%. Whatever. That's how I might structure that.
Yes. All right, so I'll start with that. I'll make a motion that we should accept the staff recommendations, which included traffic calming and shared lane markings to be installed on neighborhood greenways, West River Street being striped as a two-way urban trail following the repaving, evaluation of a road diet on Angel Street, if possible, such for, yeah, so, and then the highlighted intersections should be evaluated for pedestrian cycling improvements. Just adding to those as part of the motion is that the VPAC would like to see drawings of what a two-way trail would look like on West River before it gets installed, to ensure that it meets safety requirements. And if there's any major changes to intersections that should come to VPAC, those should come as well. Would someone like to second that?
Second that.
I think Daniel seconded it first.
That's fine.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Dan said aye. I don't know if I did.
Well, I was going to second it, so that's kind of the same thing.
I think you still need to vote. I don't think seconding is a vote.
Okay, aye.
All right, everyone's in favor. So Ed, did you want to make a motion about the signage you were speaking about?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to structure maybe you could help me out, but what I'd like to do is make a motion that for future, or for this and future paving projects, not just sharrows, but vertical signage, including primarily that bicycles have full use of the lane, would be included in the costs and funding for such projects.
That sounded pretty close to a motion to me.
All right.
All right. Woo.
Daniel, would you like to second that?
I will second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I'm just looking at my notes one more time. Regarding Hopkins Street, I would like to make a motion regarding Mr. Weiss's recommendation that we confirm that that is indeed a one-way street for the signage showing in the street view image. And after confirming that, or if that's not confirmed, move to make it a one-way street and stripe it so that parking is off the sidewalk and signs are installed. Would you even put a sign in? Like, what is that sign? If there's signing that could go up to forbade parking on the sidewalk, that signage should go up. So that is my motion. Would anyone like to second that?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're all in favor.
And just to be clear, the process for recommendations is that the chair sends a letter to relevant city bodies detailing what the recommendations were. And I believe the executive order states that DPW will respond to recommendations from the commission.
Alex, quick question. Do they ever consider installing some of those vertical plastic dividers that we sometimes put on protected bike lanes for a situation like the sidewalk one in Hopkins? Has that ever been done?
I don't think that has happened in Providence a great deal.
There are bollards that go up to block people from parking on sidewalks.
That is more common, I think, but more common and more expensive,
yeah,
than those flexible.
I mean, I find it strange that the courthouse would allow parking right on the sidewalk. You know, the federal courthouse downtown is surrounded with bollards to prevent cars from mounting the sidewalk. And that happened after September 11th for reasons we all understand. So I don't understand why the court would allow people to park right on the sidewalk right next to the building. But I am not head of security at the court, so I can't answer that. And then one more thing that, not a motion because it's not actually on our agenda, so I don't think I can make a motion about it, but there was a public request for this commission to review the RIDOT plans for RIPTA. I know that that might be difficult for you, Alex, to get RIDOT to present them to us. But I think I would like us to pursue that public request. If we cannot get RIDOT to present them, perhaps the planning department could present the plans as far as they know them to the commission.
So I agree with you that that probably shouldn't be a motion because it is outside of the agenda, but it is a request for a future agenda item that I will take back.
Okay, thank you.
Alexa, I have one more quick question about the Mount Pleasant piece. So I've been at a couple of neighborhood meetings about Mount Pleasant, and it sounds like there's a good chunk of people who support the project, including the protected two-way bike lane, and there are some people who are still voicing some opposition. Again, we've discussed this before in the commission, including the intersection at Smith, and those plans sound very reasonable. I personally would love to see them built as discussed. But I wonder how much interactions we've had with Councilwoman Ryan, and if there's anything else that we should be taking into account now that this is moving forward. I mean, I don't know if this is a formal motion to connect with them or not, but I was just wondering.
Yeah, so I have not personally been involved in the most recent conversations about Mount Pleasant Ave. I know that through some of those neighborhood meetings that you were talking about, concerns about parking came up, as well as some other concerns. So I'm not sure of the current status of any of that, but I believe some of my colleagues are in conversation with RIDOT about that. So, so unfortunately, I don't have a lot more update than that to give you.
Okay.
All right. Is that all from the commission? We can move on to our final item. So we're going to close this item, and our final item before adjournment is if there are any announcements, staff updates, or any further public comment. So Alex, do you have anything?
Yeah, sorry for not including a slide for this in the presentation. I think might have been at last meeting, I gave an update on shared micromobility, that we are working on bringing bike share back to Providence through integrating it into the same regulatory structure as the scooter program, and in conversations about that. So not sure exactly when that might happen, but it could happen as soon as this fall. What else has been going on?
Do you have any feeling on the Slow Streets program, or I mean, a little bit outside the purview of this commission, but it's a pedestrian part of the world, how the city is going to respond to outdoor dining through the fall?
So it's not strictly outside of the scope of this commission. I believe I gave an update about that a couple months ago. So the Slow Streets program in general, a couple weeks ago was evolved into its next form, which is that certain streets that were part of that program that were successful, or that we observed a need for more traffic calming on those streets were discussed in the neighborhood greenways meeting that we had. So those would involve more traffic calming on some of those streets. In terms of the outdoor dining, that's a great question. I haven't been super involved with that. I don't have much knowledge of what the plan is for the colder weather for that. But if,
I know generally there's a season for outdoor dining permits in the city, and I think it ends at the end of October, if my memory is correct. Which I've always thought is strange because we live in southern New England and sometimes it's 70 degrees in February and we would all like to sit outside. So it would be great if the city just did away with that limit.
I don't have any other updates. I don't know if there are any members of public in attendance who have general public comment.
I don't see any hands raised or any Q&A. Give it one more minute for someone to find the hand raise button. No. Anything else from the commissioners?
Not for me.
All righty, then we are ready to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.